its dainty geishas, mind-blowing technology, and booming center for anime, Japanese cartoons, and fashion, Japan, the land of the rising sun, has become a country that rose from the ashes of World War II to become one of the leading nations of the 21st century. But of course, with any country, Japan's history is riddled with disease epidemics, mass persecutions, and seemingly never-ending wars. Japan is well marinated in the philosophy of maintaining a peaceful balance between oneself and nature, which is achieved through the practices of Shintoism and Buddhism. But what about other religions, in particular Christianity? When looking at the religious demographics in Japan, less than 1% of the Japanese population claims to practice Christianity. It may be a shock to some, seeing as how in many other Asian countries, Christians are prominent in those countries' makeup. But looking into the isolated, bloody history of Christianity in Japan, it's not hard to understand why Christians are a rarity in this country. In the early 1500s, Japan had a successful sea trading market, with several European countries such as Portugal and many Dutch-speaking sea merchants. Through this sea trade, Christianity was introduced via Roman Catholic missions. On August 15, 1549, the first missionaries, led by Francis Xavier, a French-Spanish Jesuit priest, docked at the port of Kagoshima, located on Kyushu, the most southern of the 4 largest islands of Japan. Francis Xavier was a well-traveled missionary who made previous missionary tours to India and Indonesia. Francis Xavier gained a significant amount of Japanese converts in a short amount of time that arose alarms among the top-level shoguns, the militaristic leaders of the Japanese government. In 1614, the top shogun, Tokugawa Ieyasu, ruled in the anti-Christian policy that outlawed the practice of Christianity and called for the immediate expulsion of the Catholic missionaries and the eventual mass extermination of Japanese Christians. Fearing that the ever-increasing number of Japanese Christians, especially the conversion of several shoguns, will rise up and overtake the shogunate government, an anti-Christian Inquisition, or the Shumon Atarameyaku, was put in place in 1640 to carry out the removal of any form of Christianity from Japanese soil. The first Inquisitor was Inoue Chukugo no Kami, who was believed to be an apostate or a former follower of Christianity who renounced his religious life as a Christian. After retiring in 1658, Inoue wrote a guidebook for a successor, the Christoki, which listed methods to force Christians to reveal themselves and to publicly sever their ties with Christianity in fear of being executed. One method was ifumi, where people were made to step on a religious icon, and gauging by their reactions, members of the Inquisition could determine if they were Christian or not. Women in particular made up a large percentage of outer Christians from this test, because they would faint, whimper, outright cry, or have their foot physically placed on the icon. This is not surprising to me because among religious followers, women seem to be more devotedly religious compared to men. For example, the female disciples of Jesus are the only ones to attend his crucifixion, and the first believer of Islam after the Prophet Muhammad was Muhammad's wife, Khadijah. So in my opinion, Japanese women became the foundation that the Christian community in Japan was built upon, which is not very surprising because, again in my opinion, most religions are spread by the motherhead. The Christoki also listed steps that Inoue believed the Shumon Atarameyaku had to take in order to successfully eradicate the Christian problem. Step 1 was obvious. In order to dismantle the nest, one must destroy the queen or the source, which was the missionaries who were either deported or executed. And to be extra safe, no foreigners were allowed into the country. Well, except for a few of those Dutch sea merchants who were allowed to trade, though they themselves felt like prisoners within Japan. Step 2 was to destroy all Christian items of devotion. No Bible, no Christian problem. Step 3 was to erect lookout stations along the west coast to carry out investigations to make sure there were no missionary or any foreigner stowaways. And if they were discovered, they immediately were put to death. Step 4. In order to keep the foreigners out, the Shumon Atarameyaku thought it would be better to keep the Japanese people in. As mentioned previously, Japanese Christians were also being weeded out and forced to renounce their Christianity to prevent the further spread of this evil religion. Executions, according to Inoue, were actually meant to be a last resort, but the number of executions increased because many Japanese Christians, rather than apostatizing themselves, willingly gave up their lives as martyrs to express their deep faith. And you know, in Christianity, becoming a martyr is like an express ticket into heaven. The Inquisition Bureau effectively brought Christianity to the brink of extinction, but Inoue even came to a realization after describing 300 hidden Christians in 1657 that Christianity can never be fully eradicated. This realization brought about his resignation a year later. The Inquisition Bureau was dismantled in 1792. Even though for the past 100+ years, the Inquisition Bureau only served as watchdogs to ensure that descendants of former Christians could not make the attempt to practice Christianity, well, at least publicly, or try to regroup and rebuild any Christian communities. The Inquisition's brutally calculated tax dealt such a severe blow that even after almost 160 years since the forced reopening of Japan's coastal borders, Christianity has yet to even come close to any sign of recovery.